Cruise fans, buckle up because the past couple weeks in cruise news has been jam-packed with jaw-dropping stories. From a tragic incident aboard a Royal Caribbean ship to a major travel warning that could land you in jail to the shocking shakeup in Royal Caribbean's cruise strategy, there's a lot to cover and you don't want to miss any of it. Let's start with the tragedy on the 80s cruise. This is a heartbreaking story and it rocked the cruise and music communities. Kimberly Birch, the fiancée of the frontman of Faster Pussycat, one of the bands that was playing on the cruise, tragically fell overboard Royal Caribbean's Explorer of the Seas on March 3rd, just 20 miles outside of Freeport, Bahamas. And if you cruise often or you follow cruising, you know you don't just follow overboard. So it took a few days for the information to come out and for Royal Caribbean to be able to look at all of the footage and to really piece together what happened and participate in the investigation, and come to find out she did jump overboard. Now, the couple was on the 80s cruise. This is a themed voyage featuring performances from iconic bands like Warrant and Tiffany. So security footage did confirm that Birch took her own life. Reports indicate that she and Down, who's the frontman of Faster Pussycat, her fiancé, they had been arguing prior to the incident, and their relationship was described as toxic by those that were close to them. Now, Down has been cleared of any wrongdoing, but the emotional toll for everyone involved is obviously devastating, including the cruisers who had to hear that emergency call and see this happen. The U.S. Coast Guard took over search operations, but ultimately the cruise continued as scheduled. This actually happened one of the first days of the cruise. But this is a tragic reminder that mental health struggles don't take a vacation, and unfortunately, this happens more often than you might think. So if you or someone you know is struggling, please reach out for support. Next is a travel warning for Turks and Caicos. Grand Turk is a popular cruise port destination. Shameless plug, I have a free port guide right here for Grand Turk if you plan to visit. But also if you plan to visit, you want to pay attention. The U.S. State Department has updated its travel advisory, keeping the country at level 2, meaning travelers should exercise increased caution. But now there is a new reason to be extra careful. And side note, I don't pay much attention to travel advisories because if you look at travel advisories, there are literally hundreds of them at any given time. And the U.S. sometimes has travel advisories, so I don't really put much weight into them. But what is important is to know this. Turks and Caicos has some of the strictest firearm and ammunition laws in the Caribbean. They don't play. Even a single stray bullet in your luggage, which happened to a cruiser who visited there last year, he had a forgotten round in his duffel bag that he used on his cruise, that could land you in serious trouble. This man actually got arrested, put in jail, and it became a huge legal battle. Several Americans, not just this guy, have faced arrests, long legal battles, and hefty fines. So the moral of the story, if you like pew-pews, triple check your bags before you travel. Make sure you don't have any rounds in your bag because that innocent mistake could cost you months or even years of your freedom, and it could cost you thousands in fines and legal fees. Next is a shakeup in the Loyal to Royal community. Loyal Royal Caribbean fans, they are not happy about this one. They're feeling some things. Royal Caribbean has announced a major shift in its strategy. They've decided to move almost all of its Oasis class ships to shorter 3- and 4-night cruises. By next year, Oasis of the Seas, Harmony of the Seas, Wonder of the Seas, and Utopia will all start sailing short itineraries, leaving Symphony of the Seas as the only Oasis-class ship offering traditional week-long cruises. And cruise veterans, they're hot under the collar. Many feel that Oasis-class ships, with their massive variety of entertainment and things to do and dining, these are wasted on short itineraries. Plus, with fewer long cruises available, travelers who want that full 7-day plus experience, they're forced to now either book a back-to-back or pay a premium for an Icon class cruise. And the Icon class is the next step up from Oasis class. Now, Royal Caribbean, in their defense, they argue that short cruises are important as a business decision to attract first-time cruisers. And I also advocate first-time cruisers, if you've never taken a cruise, do not take a 7, 8, 9, 10-day cruise because you might hate it. I love it, but it's not for everybody. And you don't want to be stuck on a cruise ship. But Royal Caribbean gets that too. They know that for first-time cruisers, they want shorter itineraries. And they want to give them a taste of the good life. They know that an experience on Utopia is going to make a first-time cruiser want to come back versus if they sail Independence of the Seas. Still a good ship, but she's a little old and a little small. But loyal guests say this is all about profit. And it probably is. Shorter cruises mean more turnover, more drink packages, more casino revenue. But I want to know what you think. think? Let me know in the comments. Personally, I like shorter sailings. I can't always get away. I have kids. I have actually a job. I am a real professor, and I don't always teach online. And I want the opportunity to sail on the bigger, nicer ships sometimes, not just the old dated ones on these short sailings. So I kind of like it, but let me know what you think. And in this next bit of news, Carnival bans a surprising item. If you find that cruise ships are floating petri dishes, that's a common criticism people love to say that hate cruising. And I love cruising, but I kind of have to agree. They are kind of like floating petri dishes. You got thousands of people crammed in a contained space with shared ventilation. It is what it is. So a lot of folks, especially germaphobes, they like to bring Lysol spray to sanitize and kind of wipe down their cruise cabin, because as hard as our room stewards and cabin attendants work, they're turning those cleaning jobs in our staterooms over really fast. So when you embark on a cruise for a new sailing, your room probably was cleaned in like 15 to 20 minutes. It's not really, really clean. So a lot of folks, and I've done this too, have brought Lysol to do an extra cleaning to make sure our room is clean. Now, Carnival has some bad news for you if that's your jam. A recent clarification from Carnival's brand ambassador, John Heald, confirmed that while Lysol disinfecting wipes are still allowed, and I always like to bring them, I wipe down the vents, wipe down the remote, bathroom stuff like that, the aerosol sprays, including Lysol, they are strictly banned. Now, some passengers are upset, arguing that they need the spray to spray down bedding and furniture for that peace of mind. You can't do that with a Lysol wipe. But Carnival's standing firm. They're saying that their cleaning standards are already high. I love you, Carnival, but come on. But I do understand the need, because sprays can also be problematic for air quality and can damage cabin materials. But the good news, if you're still worried about germs, you can bring those disinfecting wipes. Just leave the spray cans back at home. Next up is most cruisers' dream, retirement at sea. Now, would you trade a retirement home for a cruise ship? Now, I'm a bit a ways from retirement, but I do think about that sometimes. More and more retirees are doing just that. Instead of settling into a traditional retirement community, some Americans are choosing to live out their dreams and live full-time on cruise ships. Why? Well, because cruising's freaking awesome, but when you add up the cost of housing, food, entertainment, and travel, long-term cruising, believe it or not, can actually be cheaper than living on land. There's an article, I'll drop it down in the description, but it tells about a lady named Jo Johnson. She sold everything she owned, booked back-to-back cruises, and now she's spending her golden years sailing the world. And her cost? It's not cheap, it's about $100,000 a year, but that's actually on par with some of the high-end assisted living facilities. But before you pack your bags, there are, of course, a few key considerations. Healthcare access can be a challenge, and I'm a huge fan of travel insurance. I have a whole webpage devoted to it. And while ships have medical staff and they have medical bays, they are not equipped for major procedures. But if this idea intrigues you, go ahead, crunch the numbers. You might be surprised, and just make sure you plan carefully and you've got good insurance. Finally, let's talk about some good old-fashioned casino controversy. Now, I obviously love to cruise. People ask me all the time how often I cruise. I cruise at least once per month, and they also like to ask me, which is kind of rude, but whatevs, how do you afford to cruise so often? The way I do it is I leverage cruise casino offers, and I cruise for free on casino offers. I have a whole lot of information about it you can check out right here. But when it comes to casinos, I like to follow this stuff because I'm a casino cruiser. Carnival recently ran a poll to see how passengers feel about a divisive issue. And there's lots of casino controversies, namely smoking versus non-smoking. But this time they wanted to know, what are your thoughts about saving slot machines while you take a quick break? The results? Overwhelmingly, people hate it. The majority of voters agreed. If you leave a slot machine unattended, even for just a few minutes, someone else should be able to come in and take your spot. Now, this has been a hot button issue for years. Unlike land-based casinos where there are just tons of real estate, lots of machines, cruise ship casinos are pretty small and they have limited space. And that's definitely the case as people have started to figure out things like I have, which is how to cruise free on casino offers. And again, I'll also drop that link down in the description. So if someone leaves a "I'll be back in 5 minutes" note, it's bound to cause some drama. So Carnival's unofficial stance is if you step away, you risk losing your spot. And if you really need to hold a machine, you gotta bring a friend to basically sit in your place. And even still, if they're not actively playing, they might get booted. And that wraps up the last couple of weeks in cruise news. Covering everything from tragedy to travel warnings, all the shakeups and controversy, there's always something to talk about in cruise world. So I want to know, which of these stories surprised you the most? What do you think about these things? Drop a comment below and let's talk about it, because I love to talk ship. And while you're at it, like and subscribe and visit my website, profmelissa.com, for tons of free cruising resources.